Have you ever found yourself, like I am right now, needing to basically remove a specific page from a PDF? And you can't figure out how to use all those other softwares out there? Well, you can do this in Python. So I have this invoice. This is what we're going to use today. It basically has 5 pages, and I just combined this using from a PDF that we used from a previous video. And I've just added additional pages to it. So like there's invoice 4, there's invoice 5, invoice 4 again, invoice 4 again, and then invoice 5 again. So we're going to just go through how we can remove specific pages using only Python. All right, so to use Python to remove specific pages, we're going to use the Python package called PyPDF2. Now, this isn't a package that comes with Python by default, so you have to pip install it. So you can go to a terminal, and you can just type pip install PyPDF2, and mine is already installed, so it should work. I highly recommend, if you haven't already, create a virtual environment for your project. I'll link a video that you can essentially shows you how to create a virtual environment and what a virtual environment is. But essentially, this allows us to sandbox everything, so that way we kind of keep all of our projects, in their own little world without messing each other up, essentially. So if you just do pip install this should work. I already have mine installed, so it should already be installed should all be installed. So just to say, yeah, requirement already satisfied. So with that installed, now we're going to go ahead and set up our kind of like our main guard. So I'm going to use my snippet here that I've created, and that'll automatically generate that main guard. And now what we're going to do is I want to be able to pass in. So I don't want this to be a hard-coded program that only gets used once. I want this to be a program that can be used anytime I need it. So to do so, I also like to do import OS. There's other things that you could do. There's other Python packages that you could do, like args parse or stuff like that. But for something simple like this, I typically tend to stick with OS. And I'm going to say path to PDF is equal to os.path.abs path. So this will give me the absolute value or absolute path of the path that we pass in. And then I'm going to say os.sys.rgv and 1. So what this means is if I do something like Python how to remove, so this is going to be index 0, and then let's say I want to say / so for the current directory combine PDF. So this is the PDF that I want to read in. Now we also need to do something where we say, like, what do we want to remove? So I could simply do something like page to remove, right? And we're gonna only pass in one page. We'll talk about how we can do multiple here in a minute. Let's just do one page for now. And then we can say that is equal to an int value, and we want it to be os.sys. .rgv and 2, right? So that would mean I would do something like in my terminal down here, I would do something like the path to the program, the page, which is that 1, and then the argument 2 will be, let's say I want to remove page 3, okay? So just like that, if we go ahead and we run this, we'll print this out. Print, we use an F string here, path to PDF is equal to that. And we'll copy that and print it out and do the pages or the page to remove. We'll talk about pages here in a little bit. Now I like to, line these up to make them even. So now if I run this, you'll see that it says, hey, that is the path to the PDF that we're going to remove. That is the absolute path. See how I passed in / and then when I did the abs path and I printed it out, it gave me the whole path to that file. You don't have to do that, but sometimes it's helpful when you're dealing with files. I tend to do it a lot. All right, so from here, we have our all the information in that we need from, say, us, the user, of what we want to do. Now let's write the code that'll read the PDF and then write out a new PDF with our pages that were removed. All right, so now that we have our inputs, let's do all the stuff that's needed to set up our actual PDF reader and then our writer with our new updated document. Okay, so first off, probably always a good idea to double check and do something like if os or not os.path.exists, and we're going to check that the PDF path actually exists, right? And if it doesn't, we're going to raise a file not found exception and just say, make it an F string, and we can say, please check, and then just say this right here and path to PDF. All right, so now that that's out of the way, let's create let's say the name of our new output file, or our output file. So we'll say, and we can do that by essentially, we can do that in one of two ways. You can just create a new name. Like I could just say / and save it in the current, I could say something like output file path is equal to, and I'll say / updated.pdf, right? I could do that. But if we know that this is something that we want to keep the title of, and we just want to, but we don't necessarily want to lose the original, because sometimes it's good to have the original. You could do something where you get the input information or the file, the name information from the input file. So we can say input info is equal to os dot, and I'm going to use split text here, os.path.split text. Now what split text is going to do is going to take off that extension for us and basically give us a list. I'll show you here. So let's do split text and we'll say path to PDF. And then we're going to say print, use an F string and say input info. All right, now let's run this again with our current inputs. So with our current inputs, here was what we had, right? That's what we said. And then we do split text. Now this is going to give us, I guess, a tuple. But if you notice, it's going to give us the full path. It's going to split on that kind of extension and split it so that it's like, hey, here's the file information and then here's the extension information. Now, sometimes I like to use this to my advantage where I do something where I can be like, output file path is equal to, and then I do like an F string, because maybe I want to save this updated PDF in the same folder, in the same directory, right next to the original. So I could do something like input information, and if we get the first value, if we get that first value, that's going to return that, and then I can say, since this is an F string, I can say underscore removed, and then maybe if I want to here do, I can say remove, and then removed page underscore, and then I can say whatever, the page to remove, and then I can say, oops, I want to do that. There we go. And then I can say input info and then do 1. So now if we go ahead and print our output path, you'll see that we get something like this, where here's our input information. Now our output file that we'll save to will be combine PDFs underscore remove page 3.pdf. Now, maybe this only works if you're only removing a single page and not like a list of pages. But for now, let's roll with that. And otherwise we can come back in here and then just say like removed page, right? Or remove pages. So with our file, so now that we have our, we double checked that the input path is good. We've got our output path. Now we can set up the reader and the writer for removing those pages. And to do that, we're simply going to do, we're going to say our writer is equal to PDF writer, and this is where those imports come in that we imported up above here. And we're just going to say writer is instantiated like that, and then we're going to say our reader is going to equal to PDF reader, and then this is why we had to double check the file, because now we're going to pass in the file path of our path to PDF. Now there's some options that you can pass in here, like strict. Basically, if you want it to be strict, meaning that if it finds an error, if it's true, if you put that as true, if it finds an error, it's going to error out. But if we put it as false, which is the default, then if it finds an error, it's just going to keep going, and then you have to double check your PDF to make sure that it rendered correctly. So now that we have all that done and all that set up, what do we do from here? Well, now we need to loop through and grab out all the information that we need to create our final PDF. So to build our PDF without the page that we want, basically to essentially remove the page, so build it without the page that we want removed, we can simply go through and create a for loop. And we're just going to say, what I'm going to call it for I in range of the length of the reader.pages. Now, reader.pages, I believe, will return ideally the list of pages, so like in its contents, so that you can use that. But since we're only removing pages based off of page number, we only need to grab basically the index of the page. However, keep in mind that Python is zero-based. It does zero-based indexing. So that means that we have to watch for a off by 1 error, because our user, as we kind of showed here in this command line, we actually asked which page they want to be removed. Well, if we want to remove page 3, that is actually at page 2 or at index 2, because page 1 will be at index 0, because again, Python starts at 0 when it does its indexing. So essentially we can, with that knowledge and information, and we know that we're looping through, and this is going to give us based off index, not by actual page number. And we could delineate that by just saying page index, right? Or I could say, index. Well, I like page index. What we could then do is just say if page index plus 1 is equal to the page to remove, then we're going to say, we're just going to print out and say, do an F string and say removing page, and then just say page index, and then we have to do plus 1, because this is basically saying page index will always start from 0 and then go 1, 2, 3, all the way up to like, the length of the pages minus 1. That gives us our index. And then we're just double checking that that's the actual page that the user put in, because page 3 in our case will be at actually index 2. So when this is 2, it'll say 2 plus 1 is 3, obviously, and then equals page 3. And it's going to say, hey, we're removing that page. Otherwise, we could do an else here. And maybe just for safety, I'll do that. Otherwise, I mean, don't technically need to, because you could just say, if it's equal to that, then it's automatically going to do the rest here. Or you can just say PDF or writer that we've made dot add page, and then we'll just say reader dot pages, and then give it the page index to actually get that content. So page index, right? Now you could rearrange this for loop in a different way to give it, but this is just kind of for simplicity's sake. So that is essentially how we're going to loop through and create our basically our PDF that doesn't have page 3. So if I go ahead and run this, you'll see that as I loop through, it says, hey, we actually hit that case where it says removing page 3. But we can see that if we go kind of into our folder, there is no additional PDF with removed. So how do we go about and save it? Well, let's talk about that right now. All right, so to write out our document, it's really simple. But before we do that, I think I've realized that I made a mistake. Essentially, I said that if you didn't have to put an else here because it's eventually going to do this anyways. Well, that was not really thinking, because in this if statement, if it says that, if it matches, we're just printing, right? I didn't do a continue, right? Or you could, if I wanted to just do an if. If I didn't want to do the continue, and I would have to do an else, because otherwise I'm going to have to do that, because it would fall through and it would still add our page. So it wouldn't really remove it, even though it said it did. So let's test the continue method. So we can just say continue, and the continue should just skip to the next iteration of the for loop. And then when we do this, all we have to do is do a simple write to a file. So we'll say with open, and then I'm going to pass it the path to the actual output file. And then here's the trick that I've learned with kind of this PDF stuff, is that you have to open it with not just W, but WB, because this opens it in byte mode. And so then we can say as, and I like to always just name this stream. I don't know, that's just what I do. And then you can say writer.write, and then just pass in the stream, because the stream, when it opens, it's going to say, hey, this is where you can dump everything. And the writer.write is actually going to dump everything into our stream, which is basically to our file. So barring that else is good, I also cleaned up some print statements here. I took these kind of out so it would look cleaner. So let's go ahead and rerun this. So again, we're taking this PDF, and we're going to remove, that has 5 pages. So when we do this, it should have 4, and we're going to remove page, and we want to say, let's go to page 3, right? So page 3 has invoice 4. So it should go invoice 4, invoice 5. We'll skip this invoice 4, and then go to invoice 4, and then invoice 5. So rather than 3 invoice 4s, there should only be 2, and then 2 invoice 5s. All right, so let's go ahead and rerun this. Oh, I also, probably a good thing to do, and I like to do this, is we can do print and do an F string, and then just say wrote to, and then put the output path. But sometimes it's just helpful to know where it is. And I like to do this because ideally what happens is, if this doesn't fail or nothing weird happens here, we should hit this line, and then this should tell us, hey, where did we save it? And it gives us the complete path, because that's what we had up above. So we run this. We can see that here's our inputs that we put in. It said, hey, we removed page 3, and then we wrote to this file path. Well, again, like we said, this is set up in the same directory in the same folder, so I can just open my folder explorer, and look, there it is. Combine PDFs, remove page 3. And this says, hey, look at that, page 4. There's 4 pages. So again, invoice 4, invoice 5, and then it should be invoice 4 and then invoice 5, not invoice 4, invoice 4. Invoice 4, and then invoice 5. So just like that, we have 2 invoice 4s and 2 invoices 5. So this nice thing is we could reuse this again. And I could say that, hey, I want to remove page 3 again, but rather than from this, I want to do it from the removed page. And when I run this, you'll see that, hey, this is what we passed in. Hey, look, there's our output, because again, we split on the name. Remove page 3, remove page 3. And then if we open that file up, here's the second remove page 3. This should only have 3 pages, and it should go invoice 4, invoice 5. Make this bigger for you. So invoice 4, invoice 5. And remember, invoice page 3 was again another invoice 4. So it should go now invoice 5. And just like that, we have removed a specific page. We've used this, or we've wrote a script that can be used with any file to remove a specific page from a PDF. So let's add one more layer to this, right? How do we go about if we want to remove multiple pages? So for example, if I go back to my combined PDF pages here, and there's 5 pages, and I only need the first 2, because that has only, we're getting rid of the duplicates, right? But we know what pages the duplicates are on. So let's go ahead and add to that so we can remove the rest of these, or remove the duplicates. So removing multiple pages to do that, we essentially need to pass in something where we're doing like combine 3, and then like a 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever, right? And doing this, when you get to this point, you can still do it with using os.sys.argv, but there's probably better ways. Is like argparse. It's probably a better way that we should go about and add. We should probably at this point add to that, right? But for simplicity's sake, I'll leave that as a challenge for you to go add argparse so that you can use multiple things, like a list. But we're going to do it in a way that's kind of like just very simple. So we can change this to pages to remove, which means we need to do some updates, right? And then, like I said here, when we got to this, we probably should, remove this actual page specific page now that it's a list, and we can say pages, remove pages, and then we need to do, rather than do something like this, we can just say, well, essentially what I'm getting at is we're going to turn this into a list of pages that we want to check, right? But I'll show you how we can handle that. But we know that if this is input, it's going to be a list of pages, rather than do something like, hey, this page number +1 is equal to a specific page, we can say, hey, is that number in pages to remove? Now, what we can do is then come back up here, and all we have to do is handle this. So we can just say that, hey, pages to remove is going to come in, and we'll just return right here, or we'll do an os.sys.exit. So when I run this, you'll see what kind of is the input, right? You'll see that that's the input. If we left this as an int, check what this would give us an error, right? Because that's passing a string, and we're trying to parse it and say, hey, that's invalid base 10 format. So what we're going to do is do some parsing of this. So I have this object. Now what I can do is simply say that, hey, we can leverage strings because we know that this is going to come in as a string. So we can leverage that knowledge, and we can say pages to remove is equal to pages to remove dot split. And what are we going to split on? Well, split allows us to create a list based off of a token delimiter. And in this case, we're saying that when someone passes in, they're always going to do it in the format of a comma, and then another number should follow. So we can say comma split this. Now, for those that, some people probably get upset here because, this is something that you can do in Python that other programming languages not necessarily can do, is that this is a string, and now we're reassigning it to a list. Okay, so now if I rerun this, you'll see that it comes back and says, hey, pages to remove is a list. Now, this can be great sometimes, and this can be also a pain in the butt if you don't keep track and know it, or specifically create new variables for it. So just a caveat there. This is something you can do in Python, and other programming languages, not so much, or most programming languages that are type-based that you can't do this. But now that with that information, we do have to check for a caveat, because what happens if you accidentally do something like this and you run that? It's going to end up giving us something like this, where it's like, hey, it's a 3 and an empty string. Now, this is where using like argparse would be better. But to handle a case where, say, there is an empty string, because we don't want to compare against an empty string, and this kind of also forces us that we also always have to do this. That's kind of the downside of doing it with just OS, because when you take it in like this, any space is going to delineate that as a new input argument. All right, so now let's make sure and clean it up, and we're just going to do something that, because you can see here, even still, like going back to this, if I go ahead and rerun this again, one thing I forgot to mention is that these are all strings, and we need to compare a number to a number, not a number to a string. So I'm going to say pages to remove is equal to, and we're going to do list comprehension, and we're going to say int of val for val in pages to remove. And one thing that we can do here is do like a dot strip. So just in case there was extra characters or whatever, was like extra white space, it'll just strip it down. Just give us that number and do it. But we only want to say if val dot strip. Now, what is this doing here? Well, this additional if here is saying that if you do a dot strip and it ends up being an empty string, then don't put it in our list. But if it's something valid, then return it, right? And then if it's a character, it'll then error out here because int won't be changed, right? So like, for example, what I mean is if I accidentally do something like this, what you'll see is our list comes back as just a number of 3, whereas we want something like this, and this gives us everything like that. All of our list of numbers, right? But, in that last one, it didn't include that empty string that we found. But if someone does something like this in here will error out and say, hey, like that's not a valid, as is not a valid base 10 number, so we can't do that, right? Okay. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and we can simply just say, hey, remove. We want to remove pages 3 and 4. Yeah, because 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Yeah, 4, and then let's just say 5. All right. So if we go ahead and we remove that exit that I had on here, and can't close this. So our combined page had 5 pages in it. If we run this, we're saying that we want to remove the last 3 pages. All right. So we can go ahead and run this. And just like that, it says, hey, we're removing pages 3, 4, and 5. And we wrote to this combined PDF, remove pages. So if I open that up, I believe it's this one. Nope. This one. Yeah, remove pages. Or no, that's remove page 3. This one. Third time's the charm, right? All right, there it is. Remove pages. So we said we wanted to remove pages 3, 4, and 5, and that's exactly what it did. It said that here was page 1, invoice 4, and here's page 2, invoice 5, and just like that, we removed all those duplicate pages. So again, I've walked you through how you can now remove multiple pages. So this is how you can do multiple pages, right? And then previously I also showed you how if you just want to do one. So take this information, use it however you need to either remove, write a script or create a script that removes a specific page, or create a script that removes multiple pages. That's kind of what I've done in the past to help me, and I hope you find it helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And until next time, keep on programming.